Hello, welcome to the episode of Project Math Podcast. We want to start with the basics. PMBOK, which stands for Project Management Body of Knowledge, defines project as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. A project is a temporary endeavor with a beginning and end. It's going to have a defined start date, it's going to have a defined end date. It's going to start on a particular day, end on a particular day. It creates a unique product, service, or result. The outcome is going to be unique. The outcome can be a product. For example, you want to create a project to launch a healthcare product or a finance product or a project to launch iPhone product. The product could also be a component of another item, could be a component of another product. An outcome can also be a service. You want to do a project to create a capability from a service. For example, you want to launch a campaign awareness session, bringing everybody in a particular hall and giving them presentation on the pros and cons, do's and don'ts of a particular disease, and you want to make sure that disease does not grip the country. There are NGO projects. Let's say you want to serve food to poor people. You want to create a system or a capability where you are able to deliver food packets to poor people at the right time. And you also want to make sure that the food packets are not wasted. So you have a tracking system in place to ensure that there is no food wastage. Example, Unshakable projects. We do have temple projects where to serve the people with great peace of mind. We have a project which will deal with construction of temples. Another example of a service-oriented project is you want to help the employees of a travel agency book tickets easily. So your project is going to create an online booking system where you will be able to book flights, hotels, rental cars, compare prices, make reservations. This provides the service of convenient online travel booking to the agency customers. You want to deliver the service of maintaining and troubleshooting IT infrastructure and systems. You want to improve the customer engagement and communication. You are going to launch a project to implement customer relationship management CRM system. Outcome can be a result also. It could be a research project that can produce drugs to cure disease. Process improvement initiatives are also result-oriented projects where you want to streamline the production process to reduce waste, improve efficiency. There are common projects which are running in an organization. We talk about software projects, project to implement a process or procedure, project to change in project structure. We're talking about innovation projects, transformation projects, sustainability projects, automation projects. When a project gets completed, the outcome is realized. The product is launched, it's available to end users, the product goes live, it's being used by the end users need to be trained. When a project gets completed, it gets into operations mode. The product becomes operational. Operation work is repetitive in nature. It's an ongoing work. There's going to be a dedicated yearly budget and dedicated team to work on the operations for the organization. There will be objectives every year, but they will have similar pattern. For example, you want to improve the sustainability, scalability, security of the system, and you need to ensure that it is upgraded with the latest version. Unlike projects where you don't have a dedicated team, the team is dedicated and temporary. Once the project is completed, the team gets dispersed, and it's a one-off investment, and it's going to be unique in nature. Project can lead to operations. Let's say, for example, there's a project that was launched to create a bug tracking system. The system has been rolled out into production and is used by the end users. It becomes operational and supported by the operations team. There are small changes called enhancements that the operations team will work on. But let's say down the line, there are very big issues that you're not able to resolve. The operations team will not support the product continuously because there are a lot of issues coming up due to, for example, scaling issues, performance, system is breaking down every time. You understand the system has been built with help of legacy. It is really required system to work with modern architecture. This is a big change. It cannot be handled through the operations budget. So now leadership will decide, okay, let's take it as a big project, an initiative where you completely transform the entire system to work with modern architecture. As a result, project leads to operations. There are some heavy issues that you're dealing with operations which may result in creation of a new project. Let's understand what's the source of a project. Whenever there's a market demand, a project gets created. Project is driven with market demand to address a specific opportunity. For example, a project to develop and launch a new electric vehicle model could be driven by the increasing market demand for environmental friendly transportation options. There's a demand for high-speed internet connectivity. As a result, fiber optic network company is going to come up with high-speed internet equipped fiber optic cables. There's a demand for storing big data, storage generation, and organizations are going to launch a project to provide a seamless cloud storage solution where you will be able to access the data, secure the data, and store the data. Whenever a company identifies a gap in the market, a shift in consumer preferences, or an unmet need, it will lead to initiation of project to develop a product or service to capitalize on the demand. Projects can also be created based on business need. For example, you want to expand your business model. You want to create a project to venture into a new passenger car sector. The customer is requesting you to create a software bug tracking system. He wants you to create a performance tracking system for the employee. Project can also be initiated based on technological advance. With artificial intelligence, let's say a company which is manufacturing drones will launch a project, make all drones AI-enabled drones. And with AI technology coming up, there is a lot of demand where you will need to reduce the carbon emission which is created because of artificial intelligence technology. As a result, you will come up with a project where your goal is to reduce carbon emission in your organization. Project can also be initiated to legal requirement. For example, you need to meet the GDPR requirements. You can initiate a project which will ensure that all the systems, all the projects within the organization are meeting the GDPR guidelines. Project can also be initiated due to environmental regulations. For example, there is a building renovation project that you are supposed to do to comply with updated fire safety codes. We have got cloud migration projects where you move data from on-premise hardware to cloud-based solution, and this is also due to technological advance. And due to technology advance, many projects are getting launched like autonomous vehicles, personalized medicine. Project management is science and an art. It is all about systematic thinking. It's all about systematic process that you need to follow. You need to apply the knowledge, skills, tools, techniques to meet the customer requirement. You need to customize these tools, techniques to the project situation. What do we do in project management? We predominantly do integration management where we integrate all the pieces together. There are different variables in a project like cost, time, schedule. You need to balance all of these constraints and ensure that you're able to deliver the outcome, which is a product, service or result. You deliver the outcome at the agreed cost, at the agreed schedule, at the agreed quality with utmost customer satisfaction, and you need to deliver what you're exactly supposed to deliver, which is called the scope. During project management, we will identify requirements. We need to manage stakeholder expectations. PMI Project Management Institute splits project management into 5 process groups and 10 knowledge areas. There's a separate episode where I have done a deep dive on the process groups and the knowledge areas, the importance of mapping between these groups and knowledge areas. I request you all to go through the session to get more knowledge on these knowledge areas and process groups. There are 3 approaches you can manage projects. One is the predictive approach. We call this the Waterfall approach or the traditional approach, where the requirements are defined well in detail. Detailed planning happens upfront. Phases are executed in a sequential manner. You work based on a plan. It's exhaustive documentation. Final product gets released after all the phases are completed in the last phase when it gets deployed. These kind of projects are plan driven. They don't accept changes. A change to the project is very costly. Example, construction projects where you have completed the flooring and now you are entering the painting section of the walls, and there's a change where you want to change the cement quality and you want to once again demolish the building and recreate the flooring based on a different design, or you want to redesign the building and then reconstruct the wall and then finally come back again to the painting phase. It's not going to happen because it's prove very costly and impact the project schedule. So these construction projects will predominantly follow predictive or waterfall. The second approach we have is Agile, iterative. We call this as iterative approach or Agile approach, where you welcome changes. Scope keeps emerging. You need to accept changes. You are going to deliver the outcome in the form of small increments called sprints. During the short time period, within 2 weeks, 3 weeks or 4 weeks, you are going to keep adding an increment to the product, and the product is going to be used by the end users. The greatest advantage is speed to market, reduced risk, increased customer collaboration, increased customer engagement. Instead of using a product after 6 months when it gets deployed in production and the customer says this is not what I wanted, or within 6 months there's a big change in the market and therefore demand changes and the product becomes obsolete. All these issues we have with waterfall methodology. But with Agile methodology, in a month's time, in a very short period, lesser than a month, you come to know in every iteration whether the product increment is useful or not, and the customer is able to use the product immediately and they are able to use them in an increment manner. So whatever disappointment you want to get from customer, you get it so fast. The third approach is hybrid approach. There is no single approach for any project. Every project will either follow a predictive approach or an iterative approach, or there are projects where you follow an hybrid approach where it can be predictive as well as iterative based on the nature of the project. Projects which need to be run in an iterative manner has to be run in an iterative manner. If you are going to run the project in a predictive manner, the project is going to fail. Similarly, projects which suit very well for predictive approach needs to follow predictive approach. If you are trying to pursue agile approach for that project, definitely the project is going to fail. Let's talk about constraints. Constraints or limits within which a project must operate. They are all restrictions that will limit the project's success. They are the boundaries within which a project needs to operate. We are talking about time, cost, scope, quality, risk, resources. We also talk about customer satisfaction. Time constraint refers to the project's deadline or the allocated time frame for completion. By this date, I want the product to be launched. Cost constraint refers to the project budget and the financial resources available for the project. For example, this project needs to be completed at a cost of $15,000. Scope constraint. This constraint defines the work that needs to be included in the project. What needs to be delivered. It involves the project scope and the product scope. Quality constraint refers to the quality threshold. You want to achieve the product with what level of accuracy, what level of reliability. Does it need to be 100% functionable, or is it okay if it is 98% accurate and 2% there are errors? Resource constraint relates to availability of personnel, equipment, materials, other resources required to complete the project. For example, I have got a 10-member team and I have got limited skills. Within this 10-member team and limited skills, I need to have the project delivered. There is only one vendor I can go to for this particular requirement. The resource is not available today. The resource is going to be available only after 2 months. These are examples of resource constraints. We have a risk constraint. Risk constraint refers to potential threats that can negatively impact the project's outcome. There's a risk of resource not available today. There's a risk of budget overshoot. There's a risk of scope getting cut. There's a risk not meeting the quality standards. There's a risk of exceeding the quality threshold by 2%. There's a risk of the software license getting expired. So you need to identify which is the highest priority variable that cannot be compromised, and you will need to balance the constraints. For example, when a particular factor gets changed, it is going to impact other factors also. When a scope changes, it will increase time, increase cost. You need to trade off between time versus cost. Example, a construction project that has to be completed before a particular season. It has got a high priority schedule constraint. So to meet the deadline, you will need to add in some extra equipments to automate or speed up the work, or you need to add in resources. So the trade-off is happening between time and cost. The trade-off can happen also between scope and cost. You want to expand the scope, include additional features, but the schedule has to be tight because the project has to be completed before a particular season starts. The only option here is to increase the cost. Another example is you have to do trade-off between time versus scope. A marketing team has a tight deadline for a product launch. To meet the deadline, they might reduce the scope of marketing campaign to focus on key activities. Let's touch upon another terminology. Assumption log is a project management document that is record, track and manage assumptions and constraints that might affect a project. It helps the project teams to validate any potential risk associated with these assumptions throughout the project life cycle. Assumption log is basically a repository of all the assumptions. It's a dynamic document that needs to be updated, validated, revisited and changed as required. For example, I am assuming that the customer is going to give me the requirement clarity on this X date. Assuming I get the requirement clarity on X date, then I should be able to achieve this milestone. I should be able to achieve this by Y date. I am assuming that the resource will be available tomorrow. I am assuming that the resource is only skilled on this particular module and is capable of fixing issues in a short time frame. As a result, I am going to go with just 2 days with zero buffer to complete this particular task. So you're making a lot of assumptions and then you're taking decisions. Sometimes you make a decision based on wrong assumption, or assumptions might be right, but they do change over time. Hence it is very important that you keep revisiting those assumptions and updating the assumption log. We have come to the end of this episode. I hope the knowledge was valuable to you. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.